A big step for SpaceX this weekend in its bid to develop reusable rockets, successfully catching a descending rocket booster on the launch pad. But officials in California putting up some hurdles to even more expansion for the startup. Adair DeBose is watching that in today's Tech Check.
Yes, the political battle will still be there tomorrow. Following the FAA, it's the California Commission's turn to impose hurdles on further expansion of the startup. Find out in today's Techmap episode. After the historical Starship test flight on Sunday, Polaris Dawn's commander, Isaacman, in addition to sending his congratulations to SpaceX, shared a tweet about the recent political tension between Elon Musk and California officials. "I criticized the California Commission yesterday for impeding SpaceX's progress." He added, "Unlocking the secrets of the universe should transcend politics. Besides, the political battle will still be there tomorrow." His tweet came after the California Coastal Commission on October voted 6-4 against the U.S. Space Force's request to allow SpaceX to increase the number of launches of its Falcon 9 rocket at Vandenberg Space Force Base from 36 to 50 a year. The main reason behind this is, again, politics. California Coastal Commission literally confessed to illegal regulatory lawfare against SpaceX and Elon Musk.
We are talking about SpaceX in this, and I will say, and I just want to put it out there, as a person in this process, as was mentioned earlier today, we're an appointed body. There's the politics and policy and science. They mix in these spaces. It's real.
Right now, Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims with free Starlink access to the internet.
Musk's political posts are not the only reason for Commissioner Gretchen Newsom's concerns. Working conditions at SpaceX also. She said that rather than prioritizing the welfare of SpaceX employees and the environment, the focus has been on profit maximization. Commission Chair Carol Hart added that the political matter in this case involves both the U.S. government and the Coastal Commission. Yes, I agree that Musk's political posts supporting Donald Trump have a significant impact on the upcoming U.S. presidential election. But for the Coastal Commission, I don't know what the impact is. And Elon Musk also strongly agrees with me. Incredibly inappropriate. What I post on this platform has nothing to do with a Coastal Commission in California, SpaceX's CEO wrote. The Coastal Commission has one job: take care of the California coast. It is illegal for them to make decisions based on what they, mostly wrongly, think are my politics. For example, I have done more to advance sustainable energy and help the environment than maybe anyone ever, which is not exactly a far-right position. Yet here they are shamelessly breaking the law. They should resign immediately and face the appropriate legal consequences for their actions, he added. As a result, a filing suit against the California Commission for violating the First Amendment would be sent to the court on Tuesday, October 15th. Isaacman then made a long post on X explaining why permitting more rocket launches should have nothing to do with Elon's X posts or political positions. First and foremost, he insists that most of SpaceX's rocket payload, especially Starship from Vandenberg, serve the community and national interest. Most payloads launched from Vandenberg support the Department of Defense, like Starship, protecting our national security and warfighters in the field. We are in a space race for the ultimate high ground. Starlink launches from Vandenberg help connect people who are otherwise disconnected, whether through access to information, telemedicine, or during natural disasters. It is a service that improves lives, and in real cases, saves lives. Therefore, it would not be unfathomable if SpaceX proposed the military to characterize the launches as federal agency activities, which would exempt the company from obtaining a permit. Thanks to that, SpaceX can easily ramp up its launch operations for the national interest. Comically, the Commission, which aims to protect California's coast and ocean, disagreed with that. They argued that SpaceX was primarily a private company and should therefore obtain a permit itself. It is essential that SpaceX apply for a CDP, the Commission chair, Carol Hart said, referring to a coastal development permit, adding, "There is no other way forward in my opinion." Simultaneously, they also raised concerns about impacts on the local environment caused by the rocket's sonic booms. To them, the military's recent efforts to work with employees on environmental issues are commendable. The Super Heavy's sonic boom upon landing was also the FAA's concerns, contributing to Flight 5's delayed permit. SpaceX has contested the FAA's assertions, arguing that FAA consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services evaluated sonic booms and found they have no significant impacts to the environment. "We haven't heard anything from the FAA since then, but we do know that the FAA had to agree to allow the launch to take place sooner." Anyway, it is clear that what SpaceX does is in service of humanity, not just the company or Elon Musk. Space is the last great frontier. We know so little about it, yet we could discover new sources of power, new materials, new life, or even new homes. It is a quest for answers to the big questions we've all pondered. This mission requires a generation of intelligent dreamers, and every rocket launch inspires a few more to contribute to the grand endeavor. It's worth noting that Musk's stake in SpaceX is only 40%. The California Commission had a big confusion, as the FAA did, between space and politics. Last but not least, Jared Isaacman had a final warning for California officials. And if all these big picture reasons aren't enough, consider this. SpaceX employs a lot of highly educated people to build, launch, and recover those rockets. If California does not want them, I imagine other states will. Frankly, Elon Musk's recent lawsuit with the California Commission is just part of a series of tensions between the billionaire and the state. Among that, can't help but mention the famous divorce in July, when the billionaire suddenly announced on X that SpaceX will now move its headquarters from Hawthorne, California to Starbase, Texas. He even intended to relocate X headquarters to Austin. These decisions are attributed to California's new law, which bans school transgender notification requirements. However, this is not the main driver for the move, the final straw instead. As he said, because of this law and the many others that preceded it, attacking both families and companies, signed into law by the California governor, Gavin Newsom, on July 15th, the bill will prohibit school policies that require parents to be alerted if their child wishes to change pronouns or identify as transgender. The legislation comes after several school districts in the state put such rules in place. "The state will take away your kids in California," Musk added in a subsequent post on X. To be honest, Musk has plenty of business and political reasons to make these moves, and the latest political news is just used to further stir up the pot. Elon Musk's decision to close X's San Francisco office, previously known as Twitter, aligns with his ongoing criticisms of the city's environment and policies since acquiring the company in 2022. Musk has expressed frustration over safety issues in the area, notably mentioning his experiences with dodging gangs of violent drug addicts just to access the building. The upcoming presidential election seems to significantly affect his decision. Elon Musk has previously said he plans to commit around $45 million a month to a new super political action committee backing former President Donald Trump's presidential run. It's definitely got some markers of a political lens to it, irrespective of whatever its economic benefits, said Eric Talley, co-director of Columbia Law School's Milstein Center for Global Markets and Corporate Owners. Talley also said Musk's companies will likely still have a large economic footprint in California. One reason companies find it so hard to leave California is there is a big network of tech workers. That is a hard thing to start from scratch. Moving the headquarters is one step to demonstrate this shift, since Texas often supports the Republican Party, while California typically backs the Democratic Party. Given Musk's move, California Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom fired back at Musk, tweeting that he bent the knee to Trump. But Musk's followers and fans just used the opportunity to criticize the current state of California, its homelessness problem, and what they see as lax laws. In addition to political reasons, Texas is also an attractive destination for SpaceX. Texas is known for its favorable regulatory environment and lower taxes, which can reduce operational costs for SpaceX. The absence of a state income tax for corporations and individuals allows for greater financial flexibility and can enhance profitability. In 2021, Musk also moved his residence from California to Texas, where there is no personal income tax. That same year, Tesla, another of Musk's companies, moved its headquarters from California to Austin, Texas, although the California facility remains its engineering hub. Congratulations to SpaceX on its successful booster catch and fifth Starship flight test today. As we prepare to go back to the moon under Artemis, continued testing will prepare us for the bold missions that lie ahead, including to the South Pole region of the moon and then on to Mars. As you know, after every Starship test flight, Bill Nelson has often sent congratulations to SpaceX's team for their great efforts. However, unlike the previous launches, Bill's statement in Flight 5 seems to catch more of the public's eye. Thank you for this. The American people need to know their government supports SpaceX and Elon Musk. Far too often it seems as though they're working against innovation. One commented under Bill's tweet. Elon Musk also expressed his deep gratitude for what NASA did for the Starship's project. Thank you, sir. Looking forward to serving NASA and returning humanity to the moon. Thanks to NASA's support, SpaceX can launch Flight 5 1 month earlier than the FAA's schedule. As a funder for Starship's human landing system serving NASA's Artemis missions, the national agency is deeply involved in the Starship's demo flights. Any delay to the rocket's test flight could further delay the important governmental project. This explains the words of Lori Glaze, acting Deputy Associate Administrator in NASA's Exploration Directorate, at an October 9th meeting of the National Academy's Aeronautics and Space Engineering Board. She said the agency was really looking forward to the Starship flight, adding that it could happen as early as next week, mid-October, based on SpaceX comments. We've all been watching SpaceX. They work a little differently from traditional industry, she said. We're all keeping an eye on the progress as they continue development. That stems from NASA's concern about the potential delay for the Artemis 3 lunar lander, caused by a lot of technical challenges, including an in-space cryogenic propellant transfer test that the HLS effort faces. Of course, SpaceX needs enough time to perfect its system. It's safe to say that SpaceX is so clever to build and maintain a strong relationship with a large government agency. Thanks to that, the company has received abundant resources, including finance, benefits from old space, and reputation. While SpaceX is shocking NASA and the whole industry with its incredible success in the latest test flight, another NASA's contractor is showing its incompetence. Indeed, the Mobile Launcher 2 project, or ML2, which is designed to support the Space Launch System Block 1B launch and future configurations, will cost NASA an additional $2.7 billion until 2029 to be finished. This number is 6 times its original value of $383 million. And who drains NASA's budget dry this time is Bechtel, a global engineering, construction, and project management company. ML2 and SLS Block 1B will be crucial for missions, starting with Artemis 4 scheduled for launch in September 2028, in preparation for the construction of this modern architecture. In 2019, NASA awarded a $383 million cost-plus contract to Bechtel to design and build a second mobile launcher. At the time, Bechtel was supposed to deliver the launcher by March 2023. By 2022, the contract value had increased to more than $1 billion, and its delivery date had been delayed to May 2026. Despite the initial cost projections, NASA's official Inspector General's report estimates that the mobile launcher could end up costing $2.7 billion, and that it would not be ready to support the SLS launch until September 2029. The report is based on the cost overruns that have taken place over the past 3 years, and the amount of construction that still remains before the mobile launcher is ready. Cost and schedule estimates from NASA and Bechtel have changed several times and increased significantly over time, making it difficult for NASA to identify its funding needs, be accountable to Congress and other stakeholders, and accurately measure project and contractor performance. The report read, "The agency's history of increasing the ML2's cost estimate over time also contributes to our assessment that costs will be higher than what the agency currently projects in its agency baseline commitment." The 2022 report made by NASA's Inspector General said Bechtel underestimated the ML2 project's scope and complexity, experienced ML2 weight management challenges, and experienced staffing turnover and retention issues. In turn, Bechtel officials sought to blame some of the project's cost increases on the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, delays and cost overruns are common problems on large NASA projects that use cost-plus contracts. Another typical example is Boeing SLS work that, according to NASA Inspector General, will reach approximately $5.7 billion before the system is scheduled to launch in 2028. This is $700 million more than NASA's 2023 agency baseline commitment. Additionally, work being done by Boeing, the main contractor, on the SLS core and upper stages, as well as the rocket's flight avionics suite, is criticized for not meeting international standards or agency requirements. Hardware and cost issues could threaten Artemis 4's September 2028 launch date. Back to the main subject, some explain that the issues on the ML2 project are unavoidable due to its complex features. However, bear in mind that the SpaceX launch tower is also not less modern. It is designed to support the largest rocket ever built, the Starship rocket, which is intended for a variety of missions, including lunar and Mars exploration. Thus, it needs to reach the required height of around 475 feet, higher than ML2's height. In response, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk tweeted in August, "Holy smokes," as a way to express his shock at the enormous cost and time it took to complete NASA's project. Elon's surprise makes sense because the Starship launch tower has been built relatively quickly and at a lower cost compared to ML2. Indeed, Starship's first launch system just took over a year, from around July 2020 to August 2021, to finalize fundamental structures like the launch mount, launch tower, and Mechazilla arm. Following the maiden flight, additional time was spent, extending over a few months, to incorporate the water deluge system beneath the launch mount. Therefore, based on the experience gained, the construction speed from the second tower onwards is going to be much faster. In contrast, a company like SpaceX that started out with a carpet and a mariachi band had to work hard from the very beginning. So, how did SpaceX go from near bankruptcy to NASA partner? In a NASA engineer's own words, in the early days working under NASA's commercial contracts, the working atmosphere at SpaceX was something like a frenzied graduate school, where all of the employees were being pulled in different directions. It's truly SpaceX's natural environment. By 2006, Musk, who had made millions when PayPal sold to eBay, had invested a third of his fortune into the space venture. In the same year, SpaceX attempted to launch its first rocket, Falcon 1, but ended up with failure as a result of a fuel leak and resultant fire. They launched it 2 more times, and all 2 times were also unsuccessful. They had 1 more chance on the 4th flight of Falcon 1. If it didn't work, then the firm would have gone bankrupt. Finally, God gave him a last chance as SpaceX's 4th flight as funding was beginning to run dry. On September 28, 2008, the Falcon 1's first successful launch was from Amalek Island in the Marshall Islands. It was also the first successful orbital launch from a privately funded company. Since then, SpaceX has officially been in the space game. In the same year, NASA signed contracts with SpaceX and Orbital Sciences Corporation, now Northrop Grumman, to build and fly their own cargo vehicles to the ISS. The plan worked. Not even a year after the shuttle program ended, SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft made the first commercial berthing with the ISS. The first variant, later named Dragon 1, flew 23 cargo missions to the ISS between 2010 and 2020 before retiring. But flying cargo was never the endgame for SpaceX. In 2020, SpaceX became the first private company to send NASA astronauts to the ISS. The company's success with these initial programs gave NASA the confidence to extend commercial crew contracts with SpaceX. So far, under NASA's contract, the space company has conducted 9 crewed missions to the ISS, and even is taking charge of rescuing 2 NASA astronauts who cannot return on a Boeing starliner. Things continued to go well when in June 2024, NASA awarded an $843 million contract to SpaceX to build the so-called U.S. deorbit vehicle. The SpaceX-built vehicle will effectively destroy the ISS by pushing the station into re-entry from orbit. In addition, the agency has a large interest in the Starship program, SpaceX's next generation. On the 16th of April 2021, Starship HLS won a contract to play a critical role in the NASA crewed spaceflight Artemis program. Excitement is guaranteed. Success is possible. This is actually Elon Musk's favorite saying almost every time before the important test flights of Starship. It looks like a calming agent and shows an openness to failure. This time was not exceptional, and it was just several hours ahead of the craziest aerospace event ever seen. Catching a 71-meter tall rocket booster in midair with Mechazilla spatula chopsticks. Elon Musk tweeted that quote again. There is no doubt that Starship's historic test flight really got everyone excited due to its heat. And more importantly, success this time was no longer possible, as Elon said. Instead, it was a complete success. I screamed and cried of joy as I watched that Booster 12 return to the launch tower and, with precision guidance, nestled into the arms of the chopstick, called Mechazilla by SpaceX. Yeah, it's so freaking awesome. Historic success on the first try. And I assure you that I am not alone in feeling this way. In fact, this is a common feeling of all space community. First and foremost, it's NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. Congratulations to SpaceX on its successful booster catch and 5th Starship flight test today. As we prepare to go back to the moon under Artemis, continued testing will prepare us for the bold missions that lie ahead, including to the South Pole region of the moon and then on to Mars. Elon Musk quickly replied, "Thank you, sir. Looking forward to serving NASA in returning humanity to the moon." While Starship Flight 5 is an entirely SpaceX operation, it's being watched with keen interest by NASA, and especially its Human Landing System Program Office. A variant of Starship will be used during the Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 missions, which will ferry astronauts to and from the surface of the moon. SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell was left speechless. "I don't know what to say. Remember, this woman played a key role in getting the FAA to approve Flight 5's launch date in October, amid the context that the U.S. federal agency was still insisting on a November launch date. Her voice at a congressional hearing had a significant influence. Furthermore, thanks to her good relationship with NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, the national agency was willing to participate as a launch licensee alongside the FAA. Thanks to that, SpaceX could outsmart the FAA to launch Starship as scheduled. Jared Isaacman, who partnered with SpaceX on the private manned spaceflight Polaris Dawn, sent his congratulations to SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. Big congrats, Elon Musk. You and your SpaceX team are delivering on an incredible vision. You have once again inspired the world, and people everywhere are now dreaming of what is possible. Witnessing the Ship 30's splashdown attempt, he continued, "Starship landing next to a data-gathering SpaceX buoy? If it wasn't clear before today, SpaceX truly operates on another level. Congrats to the entire team. You have given us yet another incredible glimpse into the future." It's no coincidence that Isaacman has a great interest in the Starship project. The mega rocket is planned to be a part of Polaris missions, whose first mission is Polaris Dawn. While few details have been released about the second, the third mission will be the first launch of SpaceX's Starship, with humans on board. As someone who has been keeping a close eye on SpaceX's ambitious activities, Canadian retired astronaut Chris Hadfield clearly doesn't want to miss out on this groundbreaking event. There was an enormous step forward in human capability today. Makes me even more excited for our collective future. Congratulations to all SpaceX. In another tweet, he also said, "Wow, phenomenal," attaching 2 photos of booster returning and being caught. Physicist Alex, who has always kept up with SpaceX breaking news, expressed his amazement at this seemingly sci-fi technique. Engineering history was made today. We need to invent a new word that means beyond epic. Last but not least, guess who's coming up next? Well, she is Elon Musk's mother, May Musk. Unbelievable and nerve-wracking. Huge congrats. Everyone at SpaceX is so excited. So, how about you? Are you excited about this incredible booster catching attempt? Please comment on Flight 5 below. The Super Heavy rocket and Starship spacecraft, collectively called Starship, launched from Boca Chica at 7:25 a.m. The Super Heavy booster was successfully caught by 2 robotic arms minutes later, at T+6 minutes and 30 seconds into the flight. Flight 5 Starship Super Heavy rocket booster reignited its engines as it prepared to land, but it's a landing that no one had tried before, ever, catching a 71-meter stainless steel structure with a mass of more than 250 tons. Around T+6:49 seconds, the Flight 5 Super Heavy Booster 12 rocket was safely and soundly caught by the Mechazilla launch tower, chopsticks on landing. This is a historic moment in spaceflight history. No government or private space agency has ever tried it before. Interestingly, SpaceX did it in the first attempt. The world was not expecting this outcome until the last moments. This operation is a key component of SpaceX's strategy for rapid reusability of rockets, aiming to streamline the process of refurbishment and relaunch. The booster was caught as it hovered near the launch tower, an achievement that has been described as a technological tour de force and a crucial step in developing fully reusable space vehicles. SpaceX's previous test flights had focused on splashdowns and landings, but this marked a new frontier in operational capability. In addition to the booster catch, the mission also aimed to send the Starship upper stage into space and return it for a planned splashdown in the Indian Ocean, approximately 65 minutes post-launch. This dual-objective flight demonstrates SpaceX's commitment to refining its technology and enhancing its capabilities for future missions, including potential crewed flights to the Moon and Mars under NASA's Artemis program. The fifth flight test followed a successful June 6th flight test, in which both the Starship craft and the Super Heavy booster landed at their intended locations. According to sources, the FAA has currently authorized SpaceX for Flight 6. Flight 6 hardware is mostly ready, and it could be as soon as late October. This fast movement of the FAA perhaps is attributed to SpaceX's tireless efforts to force the agency's bureaucracy to work much more efficiently. While the U.S. national election was coming closer, the tension between SpaceX and the red tape party was hotter than ever. Most notably, Starship's important Flight 5 was ready to fly, but a surprising FAA announcement required them to wait until November, probably after the U.S. national election, at the earliest to conduct the test. This is a move that SpaceX criticizes as not based on a new safety concern, but instead driven by superfluous environmental analysis. The most notable consideration listed by the FAA is the permit for operating Starship's water deluge system. The hardware has operated in Starbase for over a year, but now has recently become the target for fines, especially since the CNBC article in August saying SpaceX was discharging deluge water without TCEQ authorization and polluting the environment. SpaceX pushed back, saying their system only uses clean drinking water and is monitored closely with no harmful contaminants found. America is being smothered by ever larger mountains of irrational regulations from ever more new agencies that serve no purpose apart from the aggrandizement of bureaucrats. Elon Musk wrote on X, "As the pioneer in the wave of commercial spaceflight toward the ultimate goal, to explore other planets in our solar system and beyond, SpaceX is flying at an unprecedented pace as the world's most active launch services provider." SpaceX is also safely and reliably launching astronauts, satellites, and other payloads on missions. To make multiplanetary life a reality, SpaceX has invested a lot of money, time, and effort into its greatest brainchild, Starship. Every flight of Starship has made tremendous progress and accomplished increasingly difficult test objectives, making the entire system more capable and more reliable. In a late September hearing, SpaceX President Gwynne Shotwell revealed that her firm invested more than $3 billion over the last few years into developing its facilities in the state for Starship, with just $1 billion in outlays in Texas this past year. Last year, Elon Musk also stated that SpaceX expected to spend around $2 billion on Starship development, probably including $1 billion in Texas. He also added that he did not expect to have to raise funding to finance that work. By investing a huge money into SpaceX's Starship facilities in Texas, called Starbase, SpaceX aims to have a true gateway to Mars. Starbase has now become synonymous with the future of space exploration. The SpaceX executive shared that Starbase is a one-of-a-kind facility to manufacture, test, and launch the most advanced rockets on the planet there. A big step forward for SpaceX on October 13th, when its launch tower's chopsticks, namely Mechazilla, successfully caught a descending rocket booster. This success inspires SpaceX's CEO, Elon Musk, to set a more ambitious goal to achieve full-stack reusability in 2025. Thanks to that, the company can accelerate toward the goal of having the first crewed flight of the Starship HLS lander to the Moon in 2026, launching 5 uncrewed Starships to Mars in the same year, then possibly launching crewed missions to that planet in 2030. It's not by chance that the sight of catching Super Heavy gives us goosebumps. This is not just about an unprecedented engineering feat. More importantly, it gives us real hope for a future where no rocket parts end up in the ocean, where space travel is no longer the monopoly of a small group of people in the world, and where our tax dollars are no longer wasted on opaque government projects. There will be a lot of interesting things waiting for us, and of course, we should hope so. Keep in mind that SpaceX's fully reusable Starship Starship is indeed the final phase of its reusable launch system development program, building on the successes of its partially reusable Falcon rocket line. Although currently the program is only coming to the phase of partial reusability, its positive impact is very significant. Okay, let's look at the huge gap between SpaceX's costs versus NASA's thanks to reusability, the holy grail of rocketry. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket launches have been advertised at around $62 million per launch, while larger rockets like the Falcon Heavy can cost upwards of $90 million per launch. On the higher end, NASA's Expendable Space Launch System, SLS, is estimated to cost over $2 billion per launch. Wow, that means that they could theoretically conduct about 20 Falcon Heavy launches for the price of one SLS launch. It's so amazing, right? According to statistics, when Elon enters the industry, launching spacecraft today is 10 times cheaper than it was a decade ago. Even when compared to its contemporary rival, SpaceX's vehicle, for example, Dragon spacecraft, stands out by its attractive price tag. The cost per seat on SpaceX's Crew Dragon is just $55 million, much cheaper than that on Boeing's Starliner and Russia's Soyuz. As a result, NASA can feel comfortable to regularly take its astronauts into the ISS. Congress can cut funding for the U.S. National Space Agency and use the remaining money for more useful work. Obviously, NASA will have a hard time in the early days, but it would be a good chance for them to learn how to manage cash flow more effectively. By commercializing space and ramping up the rocket launch frequency, SpaceX has led the world about the massive payload loaded into space, up to 80%. So imagine what if SpaceX built a rocket that was 200 times cheaper than SLS. Actually, they are doing it with the fully reusable Starship rocket. According to Elon Musk, the maximum cost for each Starship launch is $10 million, which is 1/200th the price of SLS. Once Starship becomes operational, it will truly be a big bang. And Elon calculated an exact number, 90%. Yes, no kidding, 90%. It's such incredible. To mix into that wave of commercialization, NASA has also sought to bring SLS's costs down by 50%, equivalent to $1.25 billion each. By the way, Congress requires them to identify other customers for the SLS rocket, which aims to save this job program from the risk of extinction. Aside from some skepticism about the feasibility of that 50% number, many wonder that between the SLS rocket and SpaceX rocket, with a fraction of the cost, which would the customers want to go to? So, if you were a customer, which one is your best choice? Comment the name of the rocket in the comment section below. Because Starship's ultimate goal is to Mars colonization, the mega rocket is designed to achieve an over 1,000 times improvement over existing systems. Elon Musk calculates this could make the cost per ton to the surface of Mars low enough that humanity has the resources to make life multiplanetary. Recent U.S. Mars missions have had a cost per ton of useful load to the surface of Mars of about $1 billion. Moreover, it has become more, not less, expensive over time. To build a city on Mars that can grow by itself likely requires at least 1 million tons of equipment, which would therefore require over $1,000 trillion, an obviously impossible number, given that U.S. GDP is only $29 trillion. However, if rocket technology can be improved by 1,000 times, then the cost of becoming sustainably multiplanetary would drop to roughly $1 trillion, which could be spread out over 40 or more years, so less than $25 billion per year. At that cost, it becomes possible to make life multiplanetary, ensuring the long-term survival of life as we know it, without materially affecting people's standard of living on Earth. Finally, he confidently said that with the success of Starship Flight 5, we have more grounds to pursue our dreams. Especially after yesterday's booster catch and precise ocean landing of the ship, I am now convinced that it can work. Clearly, Elon Musk has made a detailed plan for his bold goal, and most importantly, he and his team are working very hard to get that. Therefore, it would not be unfathomable if I say that SpaceX will go to Mars even sooner than NASA. Yes, NASA has a program called Artemis with the long-term goal is to establish a permanent base on the Moon to facilitate human missions to Mars. However, the International Moon Exploration Program has been stuck on Earth by many subjective causes. Recently, we heard that SLS's second mobile launch platform is estimated to cost taxpayers more than 6 times its original value, from the original cost of $383 million to $2.7 billion. The time of delivery will also be delayed from 2023 to possibly 2029. ML2 will be used by the larger Block 1B version of SLS, both of which are crucial for missions, starting with Artemis 4 scheduled for launch in September 2028. Given the current pace, Artemis 4, the first mission to the Gateway space station in lunar orbit, will certainly be pushed back significantly from its original launch date. Ridiculously, NASA's contractor for the ML2 project, Bechtel, will need $2.7 billion and 10 years in total to make a launch tower that can't catch rockets with chopsticks. By contrast, when setting up the first launch system, SpaceX dedicated over a year, from around July 2020 to August 2021, to finalize fundamental structures like the launch mount, launch tower, and Mechazilla arm. Given such fast construction, the expenditure will certainly be much cheaper. The reason is very simple. SpaceX is using its own money to build everything for Starship, whereas NASA is using tax dollars. Apparently, under financial pressure, a private company like SpaceX has to find ways to optimize its flow of money. The firm operates with a markedly different approach compared to NASA, allowing it to achieve faster development and launch timelines. SpaceX emphasizes vertical integration, meaning it manufactures a significant portion of its rockets in-house. This strategy reduces reliance on external suppliers, streamlining production and minimizing delays. In contrast, NASA often collaborates with numerous suppliers across the country, which can lead to complications and longer timelines due to the need to coordinate multiple entities. Secondly, SpaceX adopts a platform-based approach, focusing on iterative development and rapid prototyping. This allows them to build upon previous designs and quickly adapt to new challenges, resulting in a more agile development process. NASA, on the other hand, tends to engage in one-off projects that are large and complex, often leading to cost overruns and delays. For example, NASA's SLS has faced significant challenges, while SpaceX has successfully launched multiple missions with its Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets. Additionally, Elon Musk's leadership fosters a culture that embraces risk and encourages rapid iteration. SpaceX can afford to experiment and learn from failures, particularly with its Starship program, which is designed to be fully reusable and capable of multiple launches. This contrasts with NASA's cautious approach, especially concerning crewed missions, where the stakes are higher and changes to the design are often avoided due to potential risks. In terms of cost, SpaceX's operational model allows for significantly lower costs per launch compared to NASA. For instance, SpaceX was able to deliver cargo to the International Space Station at a fraction of the cost that NASA would have incurred had it developed the same capability independently. This financial efficiency enables SpaceX to reinvest in innovation and speed up its processes. Last but not least, the physical proximity of SpaceX's manufacturing facilities to its launch sites facilitates rapid assembly and testing. When issues arise, parts can be quickly sourced and replaced, minimizing downtime. In contrast, NASA's rockets are built from components sourced from various locations, which can lead to logistical delays. Mentioning the success of Starship Flight 5, we not only talk about an unprecedented record in spaceflight, catching a 71-meter-tall rocket booster in midair with Mechazilla chopsticks, but also about SpaceX's triumph over one of America's worst nightmares, red tape. Why is the bureaucracy one of America's worst nightmares? Unfortunately, we continue to be stuck in a reality where it takes longer to do the government paperwork to license a rocket launch than it does to design and build the actual hardware. As we all know, building the largest and most advanced rocket like Starship is no easy work. Take, for example, in the preparation for Flight 5, SpaceX spent more than 12,000 hours replacing the entire thermal protection system with newer generation tiles. More notably, SpaceX has developed the heat shield for many years and has experienced many bitter failures in 4 previous test flights. Not to mention the thousands of other important pieces of hardware that go into making a complete rocket. Elon also affirmed that the Starship project absorbs more of his mental energy than probably the other single thing. And until now, when Starship is gradually getting reliable, a more challenging obstacle comes: regulation. Ironically, the only threat to this is regulation. Don't forget, one of the hardest things about this was getting FAA and government approval. Many have expressed similar concerns about the negative impact of regulation on innovation. However, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Bureaucratic red tape must give way to a historic aerospace launch in October. More awesome, the FAA will not require any investigation as a result of Flight 5, because all flight events for both the Starship vehicle and the Super Heavy booster occurred within the scope of planned and authorized activities. No investigation would significantly shorten the gap between Flight 5 and Flight 6. Also, the U.S. federal agency has already approved a launch license for SpaceX to fly the next Starship with the same mission profile as Sunday's test flight. This has made Dan Wood, a SpaceX communications manager, excited more than ever. "Ship just gave us one heck of a show, making it through a controlled re-entry this time. Flaps intact, made it down to the water," he said. "Starships are meant to fly. It sure as hell flew today, so let's get ready for the next one." Jared Isaacman, the SpaceX partner at Polaris Dawn, also sees this as a winning for SpaceX over regulation. However, the FAA approving a launch license for SpaceX to fly the next Starship with the repeated mission profile doesn't mean the upcoming flight will go totally smoothly. SpaceX follows an iterative development process, meaning it will take lessons learned from Sunday and apply them to the next flight. Some elements of the next mission will likely change, and this would be a seed for the potential tension between SpaceX, the FAA, and even other organizations in the future. Jared Isaacman doesn't rule out this possibility. "I criticized the California Commission yesterday for impeding SpaceX's progress, but respectfully suggested we take just today to celebrate the greatest engineering feat in recent history. Unlocking the secrets of the universe should transcend politics. Besides, the political battle will still be there tomorrow." For SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, the situation will be even worse if Trump doesn't win the presidential election in November. If Trump is not elected, the slow strangulation by overregulation will stop humanity from reaching Mars. He has a point. By endorsing former President Donald Trump in this year's presidential election, Elon Musk and his companies have become targets of retaliation from organizations with political force behind them. It explains why Musk continuously criticized the political motives behind the FAA's oversight of SpaceX. America is being smothered by legions of regulators, often inept and politically driven. Musk wrote on X, referring to the FAA. This skepticism increasingly became more obvious when the FAA deliberately pushed Starship Flight 5 before late November, whereas the national election is set to be held on early month. And more comically, the reason driven for the decision seems to be, well, unfathomable. It understands that such a unique operation would require additional time to analyze from a licensing perspective, SpaceX wrote on its website. Instead of focusing resources on unfortunately critical safety analysis and collaborating on rational safeguards to protect both the public and the environment, the licensing process has been repeatedly derailed by issues ranging from the frivolous to the patently absurd. This is obviously not the first time the SpaceX CEO has been outspoken in his criticism of the FAA. On X, SpaceX previously shared its grievances. For nearly 2 years, SpaceX has voiced its concerns with the FAA's inability to keep pace with the commercial spaceflight industry. It is clear that the agency lacks the resources to timely review licensing materials, but also focuses its limited resources on areas unrelated to public safety. These distractions continue to directly threaten national priorities and undercut American industry's ability to innovate. Clearly, these fierce acts of resistance by SpaceX are just a question of time before the company loses patience with the U.S. national agency. This ultimately has forced SpaceX to go to court with the FAA. SpaceX will be filing suit against the FAA for regulatory overreach, Elon tweeted on September 17th. Suing means that SpaceX will go through the discovery process with the FAA, which means their lawyers get to look at a lot of internal material, like internal communications. They are doing this because they hope to uncover evidence of political lobbying against SpaceX. "I am highly confident that discovery will show improper, politically motivated behavior by the FAA," he said. Alongside Starship's news, let's continue with Falcon 9's updates. The reason for the Falcon 9 upper stage anomaly in the September 28th Crew 9 mission was revealed by SpaceX's Juliana Scheiman. The anomaly took place when the Merlin engine ran 500 milliseconds longer than planned on its deorbit burn, causing the re-entry outside the designated zone. By finding the root cause and then conducting corrective actions for the mishap, SpaceX's Falcon 9 is ready to fly. The FAA has given SpaceX's workhorse Falcon 9 rocket a green light to return to flight. The Falcon 9 had been grounded since September 28, when the rocket suffered an issue with its upper stage during the launch of the Crew 9 astronaut mission for NASA. The FAA notified SpaceX on October 11th that the Falcon 9 vehicle is authorized to return to regular flight operations, the agency stated. The FAA reviewed and accepted the SpaceX-led investigation findings and corrective actions for the mishap that occurred with the Crew 9 mission. Neither the FAA nor SpaceX elaborated on the findings of that investigation or the corrective actions that resulted from it. When SpaceX announced the incident, the company did not provide any additional updates. The FAA did grant an exception on October 6 that allowed SpaceX to conduct a Falcon 9 launch of the European Space Agency's Hera asteroid mission the following day. The FAA said it allowed that launch to proceed since the upper stage would not re-enter, as it instead propelled Hera on an Earth escape trajectory. That eliminated any public safety concern about a similar deorbit burn anomaly. The launch took place without incident. The agency emphasized at the time that its approval for the Hera launch did not apply to any other Falcon 9 launches. Safety will drive the timeline for the FAA to complete its review of SpaceX's Crew 9 mishap investigation report, and when the agency will authorize Falcon 9 to return to regular operations, it said at the time. SpaceX has not announced when it will conduct its next Falcon 9 flight. The company is preparing for the Falcon Heavy launch of NASA's Europa Clipper mission as soon as October 14th from the Kennedy Space Center. But that launch is not licensed by the FAA. The Europa Clipper mission is aimed at investigating Jupiter's icy moon, Europa, to determine if its subsurface environment could support life. Europa is believed to have a global ocean beneath its thick ice shell, and the mission will gather data on the moon's ice, ocean, and geology. These findings will help scientists better understand whether the conditions on Europa could make it a candidate for habitability. This will be NASA's first use of the Falcon Heavy for a flagship planetary mission, thanks to its capability of carrying large payloads on deep space missions. Powered by 9 Merlin 1D, generating more than 5 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, as much power as 18,747 aircraft. It is billed as the world's most powerful operational booster since NASA's Saturn V. It could carry 63.8 tons to low Earth orbit and 26.7 tons to geosynchronous transfer orbit. Mentioning the payload capability to LEO, each SpaceX triple-core Falcon Heavy booster can launch twice as much cargo into orbit as ULA's Delta IV Heavy and its new Vulcan Centaur rocket. At 12:06 p.m. EDT on October 14th, NASA's Europa Clipper probe atop SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket liftoff from NASA's Kennedy Space Center, KSC, in Florida. The mission kicked off a highly anticipated astrobiology mission to the Jupiter ocean moon Europa, and also marks the 11th overall for the Falcon Heavy and its second interplanetary mission. It was also the first Falcon Heavy launch to require the full expenditure of the vehicle's 3 first-stage boosters. Normally, the first-stage boosters for SpaceX's Falcon Heavy and Falcon 9 rockets reserve enough fuel to perform landing burns for recovery and reuse on future launches. To make it possible, both the Europa Clipper probe and Falcon Heavy experienced a long and tough journey to get to the launch pad. The latest obstacle is Hurricane Milton, which forced the delay of the Europa Clipper mission on October 10th. The previous obstacle regards Clipper's transistors, namely MOSFET's devices that control the flow of electricity on the probe, which may not be as radiation hardened as they were believed to be. To make matters worse, it all happened just a few months before the scheduled October release. The situation threatened the October launch date, but NASA cannot afford to delay the mission. If the delay happens, there are backup windows available for the next 2 years, but this would also require additional gravitational assists, potentially causing further delays. The mission team then worked to determine how many transistors may be susceptible and how they will perform in flight. NASA evaluated options for maximizing the transistor's longevity in the Jupiter system. Fortunately, on August 28th, the national agency announced that transistors would be able to support the baseline mission. Thus, the mission remains on track. The Europa Clipper mission is aimed at investigating Jupiter's icy moon, Europa, to determine if its subsurface environment could support life. Europa is believed to have a global ocean beneath its thick ice shell, and the mission will gather data on the moon's ice, ocean, and geology. These findings will help scientists better understand whether the conditions on Europa could make it a candidate for habitability. The spacecraft will now travel past Mars, using the planet's gravity to gain the velocity needed to reach Jupiter's moon Europa by 2030, SpaceX tweeted on X, and Elon Musk retweeted saying, "Europa has the highest chance of life in our solar system because of the thick protective shell of ice that covers its ocean. If even simple bacterial life is discovered on Europa, this will be the most significant planetary mission ever. Godspeed Europa Clipper," he added. Liftoff Europa Clipper. Today we embark on a new journey across the solar system in search of the ingredients for life within Jupiter's icy moon. Our next chapter in space exploration has begun. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson is excited. This will be NASA's first use of the Falcon Heavy for a flagship planetary mission, thanks to its capability of carrying large payloads on deep space missions. Powered by 9 Merlin 1D, generating more than 5 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, as much power as 18,747 aircraft, it is billed as the world's most powerful operational booster since NASA's Saturn V. It could carry 63.8 tons to low Earth orbit and 26.7 tons to geosynchronous transfer orbit, mentioning the payload capability to LEO. Each SpaceX triple-core Falcon Heavy booster can launch twice as much cargo into orbit as ULA's Delta IV Heavy and its new Vulcan Centaur rocket. With 70 meters in height and 3.7 meters in diameter, it bypasses contemporary rockets, such as Russia's Soyuz, with just 45.6 meters in height and 10.3 meters in diameter. Two side boosters are designed to land back on the ground after launch and will be refurbished for reuse. This significantly reduces launch costs, as the rocket doesn't have to be discarded after a single use. Indeed, with a base launch cost of just $90 million, Falcon Heavy can launch that cargo for just a fraction of the price United Launch Alliance and NASA charge for the service. Atlas V starts at $109 million, whereas the company's other type of rocket, the Delta IV Heavy, costs upwards of $350 million a launch, limiting its use to government customers. Even ULA's low-cost Vulcan Centaur has a price tag of around $100 or $200 million. NASA's SLS is even much more expensive, up to $4.1 billion for each launch. It explains why NASA chose the Falcon Heavy instead of its rocket. NASA believes that a commercial launch like Falcon Heavy could save the agency over $1.5 billion compared to using a giant orange rocket. Furthermore, the design of the SpaceX rocket offers more benefits in terms of mission duration and orbital trajectory, improving mission efficiency and precision. In some cases, the two side boosters can flexibly be converted to expendable mode, meaning they will not return due to specific requirements from the customer. In addition, the masculine rocket stands out by its attraction, even though during 6 years of operation, its number of launches so far is just counted on your fingers. The bottom line here is its high-quality customer network. The reliability of Falcon Heavy and its missions in the past helped SpaceX to retain rich customers, and this is a smart strategy. In business, you don't necessarily need to expand your customer circle as much as possible. Sometimes limiting your customer range to a small group and focusing on exploiting them is a smart strategy. And a small group of customers that Falcon Heavy focuses on is the national agencies who feel free to pay more for priority. You know, launch prices for NASA and military payloads run higher than SpaceX's base commercial price. Government satellites often require special handling, resulting in extra fees in some terms like engineering insight, unique cleanliness specifications, and in some cases schedule priority over other commercial missions. More importantly, NASA and the Space Force will buy more Falcon Heavy launches from SpaceX. In the eyes of the military and the U.S. government's spy satellite agency, the Falcon Heavy, alongside ULA's Vulcan, is a replacement for the retired Delta IV Heavy rocket, which has conducted top-secret surveillance missions into religious orbit for more than 2 decades. In contrast, NASA's SLS is unwillingly well known for its scandals regarding delays and cost overruns. Most notable is the reports about SLS damming to Boeing, the prime contractor for the SLS's core and upper stages. According to the report of NASA's Office of Inspector General, OIG, Boeing was using underqualified workers to build SLS booster rockets for NASA's Artemis missions. The report, released by NASA's internal watchdog on August 8th, focuses on the gigantic Space Launch System, SLS, Block 1B, and its Exploration Upper Stage, EUS. Block 1B is designed to increase the amount of cargo SLS can carry to the Moon. The upgraded version is key to NASA's long-term lunar plan and will be used for Artemis 4, currently scheduled to launch in 2028. Boeing was using underqualified workers to build SLS booster rockets for NASA's Artemis missions. This caused serious quality issues, including welding issues on a liquid oxygen tank section intended for the Artemis 3 mission, the first crewed moon landing mission. In addition, it also contributes to the skyrocketing price of launch vehicles. OIG is concerned these factors could potentially impact the safety of the SLS and Orion spacecraft, including its crew and cargo. Boeing's scandal related to the SLS rocket is just one of many safety concerns on the company's products embracing the airplane and spacecraft. We have heard and obsessed about the MAX disasters involving Boeing's 737 family. We also prayed for Butch and Suni, two NASA astronauts stuck on the ISS due to Starliner's glitches under its first crew test flight. Of course, we shouldn't wait until the next Artemis missions experience mid-flight failures to fight for the lives of the ill-fated astronauts aboard. Artemis 2, scheduled for September 2025, is the first crewed mission on NASA's path to establishing a long-term presence on the Moon for science and exploration through Artemis. The 10-day flight will test NASA's foundational human deep space exploration capabilities, the SLS rocket Orion spacecraft, for the first time with astronauts. Artemis 3, scheduled for September 2026, will build on the crewed Artemis 2 flight test. The first crewed moon landing mission also operates with the support of an SLS rocket, following the Artemis 3 mission that will land the first people near the Moon's south pole. Astronauts on Artemis 4 will live and work in humanity's first lunar space station, Gateway, which will enable new opportunities for science and preparation for human missions to Mars. The mission will bring together an intricate choreography of multiple launches and spacecraft dockings in lunar orbit, and will feature the debut of NASA's larger, more powerful version of its SLS rocket and new mobile launcher. Artemis missions are accelerating scientific research on the surface of the Moon, and soon in lunar orbit aboard Gateway. Built with international and commercial partnerships, Gateway will include docking ports for a variety of visiting spacecraft, space for the crew to live, work, and prepare for lunar surface missions, and instruments for science investigations to study heliophysics, human health, and life sciences, among other areas. After an exciting Sunday, Starbase is back to normal life, but the echo of Starship's historical Flight 5 still lingers. The October 13th test is considered one of the most dramatic, high-risk space flights to date, with a spectacular return to the launch site of a gargantuan Starship Super Heavy. Imagine for the first time a 23-story skyscraper being caught on two tiny little hooks by metal chopsticks. Imagine what if a tiny error had happened at that time that caused the horror collision between a 100-ton block and a large concrete launch pad underneath. Fortunately, that is not the case for Starship Flight 5. SpaceX has managed to eliminate all the risks, demonstrating an unprecedented feat of engineering. This success inspired SpaceX CEO Elon Musk to aim much more ambitiously, successfully catching both stages of the Starship rocket. More importantly, it will not happen in 2 or 3 years, in the next year instead. Well, I don't know what to say. Good chance that Starship achieves full-stack reusability in 2025, which is the critical breakthrough needed to make life multi-planetary. He stirred up the entire space community on October 14th with an inspiring tweet. So, is that goal feasible? First and foremost, we should understand that prior to catching the Super Heavy booster, thousands of distinct vehicle and pad criteria had to be met. The safety system is also ensured when, in a worst-case scenario, the booster's flight computer will direct the stage to a splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico if any problems develop on the rocket or the launch pad capture mechanism. But in Flight 5, no such problems were detected. A bullseye landing was made, and SpaceX has enough confidence to do it again in the next launches. However, during descent, Booster 12 met some anomaly, but SpaceX will analyze the gathered test data and better the system. For the Starship's case, things will be more complicated. While the Super Heavy booster can utilize its engines to slow down before being caught, the Starship requires a different approach for landing. The Starship employs a belly flop maneuver during descent, which involves a horizontal freefall followed by a rapid vertical adjustment to manage its landing. This complex maneuver demands precise timing and control from the Mechazilla arms. At that point, the ship itself also requires operation as planned, and most notably, the heat shield needs to be reliable first. In preparation for the 5th flight, SpaceX applied the new designs to Starship's thermal protection system, including the secondary layer, namely the ablative material, and 2x stronger heat shield. They work pretty well, even though they are just being tested for the first time. Indeed, improved heat shield tiles and beefed-up steering fins worked as needed to protect the spacecraft against the hellish heat of re-entry. As the Starship re-entered the atmosphere, cameras on the rocket showed the reddish glow of heat building up on the belly of the spacecraft, intensifying as the descent continued. Engulfed in a fireball, the ship's fins stayed intact, and the vehicle came through peak heating in good condition. This sets it apart from the rocket's 4th test flight in June, when the extreme temperatures caused significant damage to the Starship's protective tiles and steering fins. Multiple upgrades and improvements were put in place for Sunday's flight to eliminate or minimize any such re-entry damage. Certainly, the new update will be improved, and much better in the next tests. In addition to the heat shield, several other parts of the ship need to be perfect. SpaceX will need to retrieve the ship from the ocean to study. The vehicle had an on-target splashdown, followed by what appeared to be an explosion in October. Given the rocket is not intended to land in water, whatever happened after splashdown was incidental to what can only be called a successful test flight. Apparently, technical matter is not the only boundary that SpaceX has to bypass to achieve the goal of full-stack reusability in 2025. There is a truth that SpaceX always has to be wary of the FAA and its unreasonable regulations. We admit that getting FAA and government approval for a Starship test flight is definitely one of the most difficult things to launch Starship. There is now good news that the FAA will not require any investigation as a result of Flight 5, because all flight events for both the Starship vehicle and the Super Heavy booster occurred within the scope of planned and authorized activities. No investigation would significantly shorten the gap between Flight 5 and Flight 6. Also, the U.S. federal agency has already approved a launch license for SpaceX to fly the next Starship with the same mission profile as Sunday's test flight. Nevertheless, the FAA is not the root cause of the problem here. Thus, Elon Musk believes that Trump's win in the U.S. presidential national election will solve them all. Otherwise, if Trump is not elected, the slow strangulation by overregulation will stop humanity from reaching Mars. From deep down, I hope that SpaceX can get what it dreams about. Godspeed. And I'm sure you're thinking the same thing. If you agree, please comment 2025 in the comments section below. Anyway, it's impressive to see SpaceX continually pushing the envelope of technology as it continues to push boundaries in the quest for multiplanetary life. As SpaceX rapidly advances its Starship launch system through its test flight program, it has become apparent that it will soon be possible to voyage to the Red Planet. Elon Musk made a prediction about the future time frame when Starship will land on Mars. SpaceX plans to launch about 5 uncrewed Starships to Mars in 2 years. At that time, there will be some problems, as the Mars Society president and aerospace engineer Dr. Robert Zubrin said that a problem with Starship is that because it's so massive, it takes a great deal of facilities to be able to refuel it. So he anticipates that the few Starships that first land on Mars will stay on Mars. The dawn of Mars colonization will require a massive amount of cargo, including vital equipment to Mars, and possibly robots with capabilities to set everything up before the first human arrival. Part of the first deliveries to Mars could include supplies such as power generators, large batteries, and solar panels that would aid in powering a propellant plant to refuel Starship and eventually come back to Earth. Zubrin pointed out that it would take 6 to 10 football fields of solar panels to refuel Starship within a 500-day stay on Mars. And if those landings go well, then the first crewed flights to Mars will be in 4 years. Of course, it is in the best scenario, but in fact, we are just able to do it after the landings are proven to be reliable. If those all land safely, then crewed missions are possible in 4 years. If we encounter challenges, then the crewed missions will be postponed another 2 years. It is only possible to travel from Earth to Mars every 2 years, when the planets are aligned. This increases the difficulty of the task, but also serves to immunize Mars from many catastrophic events on Earth. That means we can theoretically conduct the first manned mission to the Red Planet between 2030 and 2032. Musk emphasizes that regardless of landing success, SpaceX will exponentially increase the number of spacecraft traveling to Mars with each available transit opportunity, aiming to make space travel accessible to anyone who dreams of adventure. No matter what happens with landing success, SpaceX will increase the number of spaceships traveling to Mars exponentially with every transit opportunity. We want to enable anyone who wants to be a space traveler to go to Mars. That means you or your family or friends, anyone who dreams of great adventure. Eventually, there will be thousands of starships going to Mars, and it will a glorious sight to see. Can you imagine? Wow. However, as usual, the biggest boundary for Mars colonization is always red tape. One of my biggest concerns right now is that the Starship program is being smothered by a mountain of government bureaucracy that grows every year. This stifling red tape is affecting all large projects in America, which is why, for example, California has spent $7 billion and several years on high-speed rail, but only has a 1,600 feet section of concrete to show for it. While I have many concerns about a potential Kamala regime, my absolute showstopper is that the bureaucracy currently choking America to death is guaranteed to grow under a Democratic Party administration. This would destroy the Mars program and doom humanity. It cannot happen. Your help would be much appreciated. This is a fork, maybe the fork in the road of human destiny. Mentioning Musk's vision, world-renowned physicist Dr. Michio Kaku agrees. As an insurance policy, we have to make sure that humans become a two-planet species. And now, of course, Elon Musk has revived this vision by talking about a multi-planet species. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson, who calls himself one of SpaceX's biggest critics, also believes that Musk's SpaceX Starship orbit project has more merit and has a higher chance of going beyond suborbital flight. The concept of SpaceX is, we want to send people to places. It is an effort to push that limit, that frontier of exploring space. And that just about wraps it up for today's episode. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.